Good morning, everyone. Today on Perspectives is now considered a public health crisis, suicide. Today we talk to medical officials who are looking for answers and change. We'll hear from health experts this morning who are on the front lines in suicide prevention. In our discussion, we want to remind and make sure that we remind you that anyone who's dealing with mental health issues that you are not alone and that help could be as easy as picking up the phone and making a call. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. According to the National Association of Mental Illness, more than 43 million Americans, that's nearly 1 in 9, experience mental illness in any given year. Too often, though, the news headlines concern young people who have taken their own lives by suicide. According to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people between the ages of 10 to 24 years of age. Some of the risks involved thoughts of suicide are several social issues such as bullying, rape, even adoption and foster care. Now, there are several groups, organizations, and mental health professionals dedicated to finding the root cause of mental illness. Nationwide, studies are being conducted right now, and they're asking for volunteers. Here's more information from the National Institutes for Mental Health.
Mental illness impacts 43 million people across the United States. Research is our best hope for understanding and treating mental illnesses. Do you know the National Institute of Mental Health conducts research to better understand mental illnesses and how to treat them? Research studies may enroll adults and children who have depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, or other illnesses. People can participate in research to help advance scientific discovery. Join a study at the National Institute of Mental Health. Compensation may be available. Transportation may be reimbursed. Contact us.
And we'll have more information on how to become part of these studies before the end of today's program. Joining me this morning are Ida Lockett of the National Alliance of Mental Illness, or NAMI. She's president of the Mobile chapter. Also with us are Edward Pratt with AltaPoint Health and Lydia Barber of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We have a lot to talk about this morning and a lot of information for you as well today. Perspectives returns after this break. And welcome back to Perspectives this morning. Our guest again, Ida Lockett of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, president of the Mobile chapter. Also with us this morning, Edward Pratt with AltaPoint Health and Lydia Barber of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We thank all three of you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
It is 2019, and there still appears to be a stigma as it relates to mental illness. Why are we still there today?
You know, Eric, it's a very concerning question. There shouldn't really be much stigma because if we think about the statistics, you know, suicide in the state of Alabama, among the graphic that you just showed, you know, it's the second leading cause of death among kids from 10 to 24. You know, a lot of times in the field of mental health, we don't really take the time to understand what mental health issues really are. You know, sometimes we think mental health issues are really problematic, but stress, you know, getting married, having kids, or, you know, positive things in life, graduating from college or high school can be very overwhelming. And some of the most common mental health issues that we see, or I see on a daily basis, is number one is anxiety, number two is depression, and number three is drugs and alcohol abuse, especially.
So some factors and triggers that we're seeing leading to that. And as Edward just mentioned, just life in general seems to be, depending on how we handle it, how we deal with it.
That's true, Eric. Stigma and discrimination is very real. It's how we think about people. It is one of the barriers for people getting mental health treatment. But also barriers to mental health treatment is knowing where to go. The sense of self-sufficiency, you thinking that you don't need treatment or wanting to handle it on your own. But the pure fact is you need to get help. There's a variety of different treatment modalities that can help someone who has a mental illness. Remember, mental illness is a biological brain disorder. It affects the way you think, the way you feel, your mood, and how you relate to others in your environment. So it's very important to seek help.
Lydia, as you know, one of our areas of concern our veterans, and of course today we're really focusing on our youth, but in talking to our veterans just recently, in fact,
Yes.
that stigma still exists in the military because of
absolutely does.
fear of sharing that might be considered a weakness or misconceived in how it would affect a soldier.
Well, that's why education is so important for everyone, especially with the 22 suicides a day. That is a real statistic. And I think when everybody, including, the whole population, understands that your mental health is as important as your physical health, we're not going to be able to erase that stigma, but we have to get that out, and especially in the military.
One of the things in the information that you all have shared with me prior to the program, that there's a role for the media to play. And I was really, I guess, awakened, or a whole new thought process as related to what things that you all were sharing with me as far as how we say it, what we say, how we even use certain words in reporting it. So there is a media, and also now you were sharing social media is playing a role in this, and that's one area that you can't control as well as you can in sharing with us in the organized professional media area. So how do you start getting this word out to the media professionals who you can influence in a new way of sharing the language?
Well, it's important, for one thing, not to glamorize suicide. And to watch the words that you use.
Now, when you say glamorize, you're referring to when celebrities
when
or people of well-known stature?
Right, or to put out the very nitty-gritty details on how it was done. But it's important to say what are some of the warning signs of suicide, what to look for. Make sure that you're offering the suicide hotline number, resources where a person can get help. And that it's okay to talk about it. It's also okay to ask somebody, are you thinking about taking your life? Do you have a means? What's going on with you? So that, because a lot of times a person wants to be pulled off that ledge and asks and be asked. And then sometimes there aren't any warning signs, and then there's a lot of what if questions. But the main thing is to ask.
And how and what we say, and when you talk about the warning signs, what are some of those warning signs that we should be aware of?
Yeah, good question, Eric. I think for the community, a lot of times there are warning signs. There's noticeable feelings of hopelessness. There's talk about death, or I don't want to live. There could be maybe a note written, or an email, or even something posted on Facebook or Instagram. And this is the world that we live in now, and it's very concerning, and it's very scary. But having an open dialogue with families and with kids in general about, what are your worries about, what are your anxieties, and be open and honest about it. I mean, we got to be more transparent, because me and Miss Barber, we've done this before a couple of years ago, and just recently in the community, we've had a couple losses, a couple attempts, and it's really affected the community as a whole. And we just need to get the word out that there is help. Just the way that you would take care of somebody that has cancer or diabetes or even the flu. I didn't want the flu a couple years ago, but I didn't make that choice.
Right.
The people who have severe anxiety, depression, or even drug and alcohol problems, they don't want that. And really, if you think about it very simplistically, what constitutes a mental health problem is anything that affects a person's ability to live, laugh, and love their life. If something's different about someone that you love, and they're not living, laughing, and loving themselves or those around them, it's probably time to talk to them and have a very open conversation.
So you see those personality changes. And Lydia, of course, is very personal to you, and one of the words that you say that needs to be moved out of the dialogue is the word commit.
Yes, and I lost my son 9 years ago. This month, actually, my family did. And it's something I actually learned after that, like most people, is commit suicide is a outdated saying that actually is a throwback to where it actually used to be against the law. And so it's like, if you think about it, commit murder, commit a crime, and then you commit suicide in there, it's very hurtful, and it is a trigger for a lot of people. So I spend a lot of time Facebooking and saying that. But what you said is so right about people looking out for each other, and kids need to look out for other kids. And I think a good job is being done in the school systems, but they're going to tell their friends things they're not going to tell their parents. So they just need to keep an ear open.
We're going to talk more after this break that we take here and share more information that hopefully is being a blessing, and I know it is, for the viewing audience this morning. Perspectives continues in just a moment. And welcome back to Perspectives. Today we're talking with Ida Lockett from NAMI. She's the president of the Mobile chapter, Edward Pratt from AltaPoint, and Lydia Barber of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. When we talk about suicide, it says that the risk of additional suicides increases when the story is describing too many things. I know in our coverage of suicides, we avoid it unless it is a person that more people know, somebody of stature in the community or nationally. We usually avoid it otherwise. But is that good to stay away from covering it if we have this now considered a public health issue? Should we stay away from covering, or how do you feel about that, Lydia?
No, I think covering it is a good thing. But when you said describing it, that is absolutely, there's no reason in the world to describe how the name, unless the parents give it or the family gives it the okay. But no, it's important for people to know that this does take place, but have to go by the rules of journalism. But no, I think it should be.
Okay, because we do usually avoid it unless it is somebody that more people in the community today here in our operation.
Right.
I was telling someone and sharing my family with Ida that we are both in the same congregation, and I heard prayer and concern about a certain area here along the Gulf Coast of where it seemed to be something going on. I understand there are also games and apps and things that people are using to play a little risky games with this. What's going on now?
Yeah, Eric, that's a really good question, because over the last couple of years we've seen social media really take a big role in kids attempting playing games like the Blue Whale Challenge was a couple of years ago, and other high-risk games that promote and idealize kids hurting themselves for other people, and that's why social media is such a big thing that we need to be aware of, and parents need to monitor social media and make sure that the kids are mature and confident enough to manage that, because it's still a lot to manage.
What are you all telling parents? Because that is a major concern, social media as well as the other sources that kids have a way of communicating today. What are you telling parents through NAMI?
Well, I think what he said is key, that you need to monitor your child. You need to know what sites that they're going to. You need to limit the amount of time that children are spending on social media. And just to be there and talk to them about what they're looking at.
And where it's coming from.
Yes.
Lydia, feel comfortable in sharing whatever you feel. As you look back and analyze, and I'm sure you do that, did you see signs that you weren't really aware were signs at the time?
Yes, and again, this was talking to his friends afterwards, and things that did happen in hindsight. He was very talented, very outgoing, but at the same time, he was a little isolated, and I think his friends would agree with that. He was he felt everything a lot, maybe more than most kids do. So things like that afterwards, and I read the signs, and then giving things away were some things closer to the date, that I knew that he gave away some of his belongings, and that could be something also. Poems that I know that he wrote afterwards that we found were very dark, but at the same time, he again was very creative, so that's a balance right there about what to do. But yes, absolutely, in hindsight we would have done things differently.
What are you telling parents, with it being so personal and close? What are you telling parents today through your foundation and the organization?
Well, I'm telling them to talk, to don't feel like, and another a myth about suicide is if you talk about suicide, they will do it. No, that's not true. Most of these kids and adults, they want help, and they need to know people care about them. So I'm telling them to keep the lines of communication open, and like Ida said earlier, just flat out ask them, if you even think, you know, how are you doing? Are you thinking of taking your life? It's really important. You have to be open to these kids. You have to be open.
One of the things that you say also is suicide is complex. There are almost always multiple causes of this happening, not just one thing you can point it to. And you advise, don't say after something happened, they did this.
Right.
What are you seeing when you all do your research, how all this combines to happen?
Yeah, that's good, Eric. You know, I teach a course called Mental Health First Aid, and you go to altapointe.org and you can look up that information. I also teach a course in the school system called More Than Sad, and I've been teaching that course to thousands of kids over the last 8 years in Baldwin County. And I can tell you one thing, in Mental Health First Aid and teaching More Than Sad, suicide prevention, that if you had to put together a sentence that really adequately describes what it feels like when somebody takes their life, it is this phrase: to escape unbearable anguish. That is a very powerful statement. And if you could really just think about what that means, you know, that's powerful, you know. And a lot of times kids go on social media, or whenever I talk and work with kids, two things they really want: more love and attention. And if they can get it from family, from friends, from one trusted adult, we have a better chance of, you know, having that one person that they can talk to and confide in to prevent this from happening.
When we come back, we're going to talk some more and also share the information of where people can reach out to, because that's the key, that all of these things are treatable, and that's what you're all promoting, that we can address it and deal with it.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
We've got more information for you as well, still to come this morning on Perspectives, which continues in just a moment. And welcome back to Perspectives. This morning we're talking about mental illness as well as suicide among our youth. And joining us today, Ida Lockett, as well as Edward Pratt and Lydia Barber, all from organizations working to be a part of front line of preventing as well as resolving the problems and issues that our young people are dealing with. When you go into the high school, what are you hearing from the children who are receiving this information? Do they all are required to attend, or you have them come, those who are interested? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a collaborative relationship with Alta Point and the Board of Education. You know, we have some schools that willingly ask us to come every year, and we usually target 9th grade and usually the career prep classes. And every year for the last year, I've probably taught to all of the 9th graders at certain high schools, and we would like to do more in many of the schools. And you know, More Than Sad, Mental Health First Aid, whatever we can do to get the word out in Miss Barbara's program, anything we can do to.
You know, it sounds like what Lydia said earlier about you can talk about it, and there might be a fear or perception of if we bring SAD in and talk about it, we may open the door to something, but you're opening a door to prevention.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Just like Lydia said earlier, mental health is just as important as physical health, so you should not be afraid to talk about your mental health. And NAMI also has a program called Ending the Silence, and where you go into high schools and you talk to them about the warning signs, mental illness. And so however you get the information is very important. There's lots of resources out there, and so it's important, like everyone has said, to communicate and to talk about it.
We need to have honest dialogue and
Yes.
discussion. What can we do to reach the people who are in the decision-making process or positions that are the ones who we fear sharing the information to them because they may cause issues in our employment and our life in general? How do we get to them to get them to understand that, yes, we do need to be discussing these things?
I think, it's really a good question. Over the past couple of years, I can't tell you how many times I've been to a school or to an assembly or just talking with people after the devastation of just one life. Mm-hmm. And I'm born and raised in Robertsdale. It's happened in my community. It's happened in Fairhope. It's happened in all over the state.
All sectors. Yeah.
Yes, and mental health problems. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter where you come from or who you are, or how much money you do and you don't make. I mean, it's really an equalizer. And so we really need to take care of each other. And I hate to just sound cliche-ish, but choosing kind and just loving each other and just knowing that everybody that you see is struggling with something. And so just walk a little bit lighter.
You think about that in conjunction with our military veterans. I'm a veteran, and in talking to our veterans, they still feel there's that barrier in the military while on active duty that you just don't dare go and say that, well, I need to go over to the, and get some, a checkup. It's still a fear factor there.
Right. I think that is changing. I really do. I think since it's being talked about more and more, I have been floored of how much more mental illness is being. I mean, look at this being talked about just in even the 5 or 10 years. So I think that is changing, and but there's a lot of work to be done for sure.
Yes. That's good to hear. We need to have optimism.
Yes, we do.
Definitely.
And thank you for your service. And you're correct, because once upon a time you couldn't report that you were having some psychiatric problems. But if you are having problems with dealing with everyday life, you need to talk to somebody. You don't need to have it all bottled up. It's important to be able to, to talk about it and get the help that you need.
And throughout the year, you all have events to bring the public into the awareness of mental health.
Yes, NAMI, which stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We just recently celebrated Mental Illness Awareness Week. Every year we have a family movie day for individuals at the Crescent. Also coming up April 4th, 2020 is our NAMI Mobile Walk, which is our primary fundraiser, and it also decreases stigma about mental illness, and it's open to the public.
Okay, and every October you also have for the foundation.
Yes, the Out of the Darkness Walk. There's about 750 of them in the fall, and it is the main fundraiser for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
We thank all three of you for joining us today, and of course your organizations being a part of this. And earlier in the program we mentioned that nationwide studies are being conducted into mental health issues, and they're looking for volunteers to participate. Go to the National Institutes of Mental Health website. You see there the address you see on the screen. It will direct you to more information on what studies are available and how to participate. We thank our guests so much again for being a part of the discussion today.
Thank you.
We invite our viewers to reach out to get more information on this very critical issue. Well, thank you for joining us on Perspectives this week. We look forward to seeing you again on our next program. Until then, I'm Eric Reynolds. Have a great week.